Hello, I'm Joanne Bjornson, Senior Vice President of Human Resources at Leidos, and Executive Sponsor of APIN, our Asian Pacific Islander Network Employee Resource Group. I want to welcome you to the SASE Professional Webinar Series hosted by Leidos. We commend all of you for joining today's webinar and taking the important step in investing in your professional growth. At Leidos, we are proud of our diverse population of talented professionals, including our strong Asian Pacific Islander community. It is only through the diverse perspectives of our employees that we are able to differentiate ourselves and build on our over 50 years of history in delivering critical solutions to our customers' most demanding challenges. By fostering a sense of belonging, welcoming all perspectives and contributions, and providing equal access to opportunities and resources for everyone, Leidos promotes an environment where inclusion is part of the fabric of our culture. Again, welcome, and we hope you enjoy today's session.
Scene 5, take 1, Mark.
Inclusion is
access to opportunities,
unique perspectives. Inclusion is
to a team.
Access to opportunities,
unique perspectives. Inclusion is
belonging
to a team.
Access to opportunities,
unique perspectives.
To achieve.
Inclusion is
belonging
to a team.
That respects our differences.
Access to opportunities,
and embracing our unique perspectives.
To achieve.
So let's go from the top.
Inclusion is
belonging
to a team.
That respects our differences.
having equal access to opportunities,
and embracing our unique perspectives.
To achieve.
greatness.
I like it.
Inclusion
Fuels innovation.
Inclusion is
all
all of
us.
us.
Inclusion
As Leidos.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar sponsored by Leidos. I wanted to share with you, for some of you who perhaps don't know who we are and what SASE Pro does, I wanted to give you a little bit of background about SASE Pro before we introduce our trainer for today. So first off, SASE Pro, our mission is to unlock the leadership potential of Asian professionals. The reason we do this is that we've got this problem called the Asian leadership gap. Asians are nearly 50% less likely than our Caucasian counterparts to be promoted to middle management. This is to middle management and executive positions. This is unique to the Asian population for middle management, and results in a tremendous amount of untapped potential. And so we've done our research a bit to try and figure out why. What are the common factors that exist that prevent progression within organizations? And we've come up with basically 4 key areas: the lack of political and organizational savvy, cultural deference to authority, ineffective communication and influencing skills, and an aversion to risk-taking. So then from there, we've got to figure out, what to do. But we've got some key challenges. Key challenges being, one is just even understanding that this exists to begin with, that is even a problem to begin with. The extent to this problem, the numbers behind it are actually very recent. Prior to 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't actually have data. We just knew qualitatively that there were issues, but more and more research is coming out now. Number 2 is, leadership skills. It's actually not just the training, but it's actually with the cultural context, and that's really what makes it land. And so having a group of Asian professionals taught by either an Asian trainer or someone who understands the specific nuances to our community is incredibly important for that to really make sense. And that would be true of any ethnic group or any minoritized group, quite honestly. And then the last thing is, Asian development is often a lower priority for companies as they look and try and figure out where to allocate their resources, very limited resources. It ends up being challenging, and Asians end up being a tertiary or quaternary problem, or third or fourth on the priority list. So given these headwinds, what we do at SASE Pro is we partner with actually I need to update this slide, but 75 plus ERGs at this point to create programs for everyone at a scale that is affordable and accessible, more for these employees that wouldn't be available otherwise. And so we've got year-round programs along with our key events. Our national conference is coming up, and I'll talk about that at the end. But this webinar series is one of those year-round programs. It's an ongoing free series. Right now it's being provided by Leidos, as you saw from the video. That allows it to be free, that sponsorship. We feature training partners or interviews with executives. It happens about once every four weeks or so. We'll post the video for 2 months on our website, and you can just follow us on LinkedIn to stay in touch with what's going on. But enough about that. I'm sure you'd like to actually start with the webinar. So, our topic today is exploring mindfulness and reducing stress. Suzanne Taylor is one of our partners with the Asian Women Coaching Collective. She is one of the, is a trainer based out of Menlo Park in California. And she and I have talked a lot about this session. What we've noticed over time is that often with these webinars, people find it difficult to focus. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of multitasking and so forth. So we actually selected this topic for that reason is, okay, how do we take a step back and focus and provide a little bit more clarity and de-stress a bit and so forth like that. So, with that, let me hand it over to Suzanne, and I will moderate questions as you go, put them in the chat, and Suzanne, let you take it over.
Very excited to be with you all here today to talk about exploring mindfulness to reduce stress. And we all have our CVs and our experience, but the main thing at the bottom is that my purpose is to make a positive impact by compassionately helping people grow and develop using self-reflection, discovery, and meaningful conversation. I currently work as a life and leadership coach, and I've been teaching at Stanford for 20 years. My goals today are to give you some useful information, a chance to practice several mindfulness techniques, ideas and inspiration, and motivation to try some of these and explore for yourself. And when Parag was just reviewing some of the challenges that Asian leaders face, I was making the connection that all of these techniques can help you become more effective at work, get more clarity, compassion for yourself, and confidence to step fully into your roles and speak your truth. And when I have on this list a chance to practice, don't worry, we're not going to be meditating, but one of the things we're going to be doing is some mindful eating. So it would be great if you have a snack. I have an orange with me. Good luck in a lot of Asian cultures. So a piece of fruit or other small snack or beverage would work as well. So if you can have that on hand, that would be great. I love this happiness formula. So this is based on some research from Martin Seligman and a lot of positive psychologists. And it's not an exact science, but through many studies, they found that these are the 3 things that determine your happiness level. About 50% of it you can think of as your happiness set point, or something you're basically born with. It's basically how you're usually feeling. About 40% of your happiness levels are from your own intentional activities, and today's mindfulness practices fall into this 40% bucket. And finally, about 10% of our happiness levels are due to external circumstances that are beyond our control. So we can't really do much about those. So I wanted to run a poll now. And Jessica, do I need to stop sharing my screen to run it, or? Oh,
I went ahead and pushed it. Yep.
Okay, thanks. So if you could please participate in this anonymous poll, there are 2 questions. Then I'll share results. The first question is, how stressed do you feel on a typical workday? Extremely stressed, very stressed, somewhat stressed, a little stressed, or not at all stressed? And then the second question below that is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy do you feel right now? From 1 is not at all happy to 10 is extremely happy. So we'll wait a few seconds to give you a chance to answer this anonymous poll. This obviously will give us a chance to get a pulse on how you're all feeling today. All right, let's end the poll and share results. And what we can see from the first question is that the most common answer is somewhat stressed, followed by a tie between very stressed and a little stressed as far as how you feel on a typical workday. So that's pretty much a bell curve, isn't it? If you looked at it sideways. So that's interesting, and you can see where you might fall in. There are no right or wrong answers, of course. And you can also see that whatever you're feeling, it's probably quite normal. A lucky few of you are not at all stressed, so yay. On the second question, well, it's not quite a bell curve, but we're seeing that, wow, there is a lot of positive emotions that people are feeling right now at 8 and 7. And then after that, the next common answers are, or most frequent answers are 4 and a tie between 5, 6, and 3. So this gives us a little pulse on how everybody is feeling right now, and that's useful for all of us. And what is mindfulness? All right, for some reason my slides, oh, there we go, okay. What is mindfulness? Well, here are some of the definitions. There are many different definitions. It's sustained present moment awareness, it's neutral and non-judgmental, where you're aware of both your inner world and the external world. And I love this definition from Leah Weiss. It's the intentional use of attention. And given that definition, well, mindfulness could be a whole variety of activities, even moving activities, art and creativity, or even having a meaningful conversation with someone. There are many, many different benefits of mindfulness practices, both physical and mental health related. Less cortisol, a stronger immune system, and reduced symptoms of cardiovascular disease, asthma, type 2 diabetes, PMS, and chronic pain. So many, many measured and researched benefits on the physical side, but also with mental health benefits, less stress, anxiety, insomnia, and panic, better attention, mood, and well-being, and more empathy and compassion, both for ourselves and for others, so you can show up more fully as a leader at work. An important related concept is the negativity bias. Basically, we're all hardwired in our brains to focus on the negative and worry about things and seek out dangers. The reason why we have this hardwired in our brain is because our ancestors survived this way. They worried about having enough food, and they had to avoid enemies and dangers and risks. So we should feel grateful for our ancestors. They did survive, and therefore we exist. And we also need to be aware that sometimes we focus too much on the negative. Sometimes we over worry. What Rick Hansen says is that we tend to have Velcro for the negative thoughts and Teflon for the positive thoughts. So the positive thoughts may just slide right off. And if you feel like it in chat, you can enter in something that maybe you over worry about. And I'll give you my own example. We live in Northern California, and our middle daughter lives in Los Angeles in Southern California. And for 4th of July, we met in the middle at Pismo Beach for vacation. And our daughter from LA was running a little late, and my negativity bias kicked in. And this happens a lot with parenting. And I started thinking, what if she gets in a car accident? There's so much traffic this holiday weekend. We saw a couple of really bad accidents on the way, and there's some terrible drivers out there. And it just started going down the rabbit hole. You may feel that familiar idea. And then I caught myself. I became aware and I paused and I said, oh, there's my negativity bias. I can name it, label it. What is a more useful thought that I can shift to? And so what I shifted to deliberately was, I'm really looking forward to seeing Valerie later today. And that really saved me a lot of unnecessary worry and unnecessary stress. So another wonderful metaphor from Rick Hansen is to cultivate the garden of the mind. We want to pull the weeds, plant the seeds, and water the flowers. We want to find things that will be more useful and skillful for us. You may have heard this famous quote from Viktor Frankl. He was an Auschwitz concentration camp survivor, and in the midst of this horrible suffering and pain and misery, he asked himself, what is the meaning of this suffering? And one day he concluded that this was it. It's choicefulness. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And he told himself, if I survive this horrible experience, I'm going to make it the purpose of my life to research this, to teach it to people, and to write about it. And this choicefulness you can think of as pushing the pause button. I often literally imagine myself pushing the TV remote control pause button, take a few breaths, and ask myself, what is a more useful way to approach the situation right now? And I love that word useful too. And one interesting fact is that, did you know that our brains, magnificent though they are, sometimes overthink in addition to overworry? Some people estimate that we think about 60,000 thoughts a day, and that about a third of those thoughts are repetitive day to day. So this is maybe more thinking than we need to do. So part of mindfulness is to slow down and try to push the pause button and make more useful and healthy choices. Okay, so now we've covered what is mindfulness and how can it benefit you. Now let's practice. So one very common category of techniques is breathing techniques. There are so many different ones to choose from, but I'll explain a few of them. Basically, you always have this accessible with you, right? So you can practice this at any time. I was practicing this myself before I logged into this Zoom call. I knew that my heart would start pounding. It's that familiar anxiety, before you have an important meeting or presentation. And what deep mindful breathing can do is turn off your stress response, that's the sympathetic nervous system, and switch it to the rest and tend and befriend, relaxation response. That's the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is deep breathing into your belly. It's not shallow breathing into your chest area. And so let's try box breathing. This is the first one on the technique. And basically, we're going to go around a theoretical box, the four sides of it, for 4 seconds on each side. It will be a slow inhale and then a holding of the breath for 4 seconds, then a slow exhale for 4 seconds, and a holding of the breath for 4 seconds. That's one time around the box. And we're going to go around the box 3 times, which takes about a minute. All right, so let's start the box breathing with an inhale for 4 seconds. And hold your breath. And exhale for 4. And hold your breath for 4. And inhale. And hold it. And exhale. And hold it. And inhale. And hold it. And exhale. And hold it. Woo, you just did your first mindfulness breathing practice. That was the box breathing technique. By the way, I'm remembering I had a client, he had suffered from terrible insomnia for 20 years. And we practiced the box breathing technique, and he started doing it in the middle of the night when he would wake up. And it was the only thing that worked for his insomnia that he had tried in 20 years. So it sounds so simple, and it is, and it can also be very effective. Another breathing technique is called in and out, and it's simply saying to yourself in your mind as you slowly inhale the word in, and then simply saying to yourself in your mind as you exhale the word out, and repeating that for about a minute or two. So that's even simpler. Another simple technique is count to 10. So as you slowly breathe in and out into your belly, you simply count your breaths from 1 to 10. And then if you get to 10 and want to continue, just start over again at 1. Simple, right? And I love this quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. Peace in every step. The shining red sun is my heart. Each flower smiles with me. How green, how fresh all that grows. How cool the wind blows. Peace is every step. It turns the endless path to joy. By the way, reading poetry and appreciating it is a mindfulness technique. In case you don't know, Thich Nhat Hanh was a famous Buddhist monk, an amazing role model teacher and writer. He's written many different books. And Martin Luther King Jr. nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. Thich Nhat Hanh had written to Martin Luther King Jr. about raising awareness and bringing peace to Vietnam. This reminds me, of course, that many of these techniques you may be very familiar with, or they may feel natural to you. These have been practiced in Asian cultures and countries for thousands of years. So I looked it up on Google that the first record of meditation may have been in the year 5000 BC in China and India. So it seems fairly newfangled in the West. I think it was the late 70s that people started researching mindfulness-based stress reduction and putting some rigor around the research, some numbers around the benefits and practices. But these are practices that go way, way back in our ancestral roots. And in a way, by practicing them, we can get more in touch with our roots. And so now I will lead you in another breathing practice. And this is inspired by that quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. So simply inhale and exhale as I guide you through this. It takes about a minute. So inhale peace and exhale joy. And inhale harmony, exhale love. Inhale strength. Exhale humility. Inhale kindness. And exhale compassion. Inhale beauty. Exhale laughter. And inhale peace. And exhale joy. And you can choose any qualities you want to focus on and do that practice as well for yourself. So now if you feel like it, you can put into chat, what did you notice with these two breathing techniques that we just tried? There are no right or wrong answers. And Parag may read a couple of these out loud to share with us.
See, intention, more relaxed and feel like nothing now. Well, Gil, I think I saw you in the office, so I don't know if you want to do that right now. But if you're at home, that could work. Body relax. You know, for me, I actually, especially with that second one, I had images pop in my head for each of the items. So relaxed, 3 people relaxed. And
nice. And so this is something you can do, of course, when you need to take a break in the middle of the day. We can't just push through 8 or more hours of work a day and not take a break. So this is something that can be a little refresher, like at lunchtime or whenever. And by the way, photography is another mindfulness technique, as is cloud gazing. And this is a picture I took of the clouds last May. Remember, there was a lunar eclipse, and this is an hour or 2 before the lunar eclipse began. And the light was really unusual that day. So I took this picture of the clouds then. And another category of mindfulness techniques is called sensory awareness. And most of us, not all of us, have access to our 5 senses: sight, sound, taste, smell, and touch. And we can cultivate any or all of these 5 senses in sensory awareness practices. And Parag was just mentioning that he was starting to see some visions with the words that I was reading out. Because if you do have a sense of sight, that is the primary sense that we use. And this is a photo. I did a silent retreat, a week-long retreat at Asilomar in Pacific Grove at the beach with Deepak Chopra, and you may be able to pick him out there. He's in a dark blue shirt in the middle around the third row. And I'm all the way back with a dark blue jacket, standing safely way in the back. And I'm not suggesting that you do something as extreme as a week-long silent retreat, but I'll just share a little bit, which was, we did a lot of yoga, meditation. We did some slow, mindful, barefoot walking on the beach. We listened to his talks. And at first it was very, very strange to turn off all of our electronic devices and not have those usual distractions and conversations and that to-do list that we're normally doing, but to slow way down and to go inside. And one of the strangest things was eating silently together in the cafeteria. There would first be the noticeable scrapes of the chair on the floor or the silverware clinking. But eventually we eased and relaxed and went into the whole experience. And one thing I really noticed was all my five senses were heightened. The colors were so vibrant, and I could hear sounds that must have been there before that I hadn't noticed before. Everything was so much more exquisite and so wonderful to notice. So if we were to adapt a few ideas that are a little more accessible and easy to try, think about, could you go a whole day or a whole weekend without using your cell phone, or without checking social media, or without checking the news? We are sometimes addicted to all of these devices and social media and the news, and often they don't really serve us. What can we delete, or what can we take off the to-do list to try? There's so much beauty to see out in nature, especially. I love this flower. I just saw it on a walk. The saturation of the colors, the fragile edges of the petals, you can tell it's starting to go past its peak bloom. The burst of energy in the middle, and the shape, of course, reminiscent of the sun. And this beauty is all around us, if only we look. And speaking of the five senses, this is time to have our mindful eating. So if you can have your snack at hand or your beverage, what we're going to do is go through all five senses. So first of all, pick up your snack and really look at it. Observe. Then feel it. Feel it in your hand or with your fingers. What textures or temperature do you notice? Where is it softer or harder? All right, now you can smell it. And if you do have a citrus fruit, you know how there's a burst of smell once you poke your finger through the skin. Smell it. Okay, now it's time to take a taste, take a bite. Really taste it. Feel it within your mouth. There's a texture. And there's a sound as you eat it. You can hear yourself chewing or swallowing. Mindful eating is a wonderful thing to do. And I used to be very guilty of eating at my computer. And often I would finish my snack or my lunch and say, where did it go? Because I was multitasking while eating, which is really not enjoying and appreciating the food and the nourishment and energy that it can give me. Mindful eating is a wonderful way to really tune into your body's hunger and what it truly needs for its nourishment. It's also called intuitive eating. And one technique is to think about your hunger on a scale from 1, which is starving to death, to 10, which is you're so stuffed you can barely move. And to eat when you're about at a hunger level of a 3, and then to stop eating when you get to a satisfaction level or hunger level of about a 7. And that means you're also really tuning into the true hunger that your body is feeling, not just what you might be craving in your mind at that point. So if you feel like it, put into chat, what did you notice with this mindful eating practice we just did? And maybe, Parag, you could read a couple of those entries.
Still eating. More enjoyable bite. I would agree with that. For me, I noticed on my orange that there's other colors than orange, right? The dimples are a little bit more red than they would be orange. They're just darker. So, and I'd never thought of that before.
Yes, there's so much detail if we really pause and notice it.
Yeah.
And there are also memories. There are memories from scents and tastes. I used to live by an orange grove, so this really reminds me of when I was a kid.
Gotcha. Quieting my thoughts, the intention of active eating, can taste it more than before. My snack was cool, refreshing, and has too much sugar.
Yes, another example of heightened senses. Yes, and when you do this mindful intuitive eating, your tastes and preferences may change, actually.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
All right, let's move on to body sensing. This is another category. So if you would, put the bottom of your feet on the floor and feel that contact between the bottom of your feet and the ground, the earth. And you can close your eyes if you feel like it and wiggle your toes. And take a deep breath into your belly. And notice where you might be holding tension in your body. And for example, I often hold tension in my neck and shoulders, and so I can do a little neck stretch or shoulder rolls. Our bodies notice and can tell us things, that there's much wisdom in the body. So if you notice that your body is tensing up in a typical place, it's telling you something. So feel the bottom of your feet on the ground. Feel your bottom sitting on your chair. Sense into your legs from the inside. Sense into your belly, your chest. Sense into your arms, your wrists, hands and fingers. Sense into your head. And rub 2 fingertips together so carefully that you can feel the ridges of your fingerprints. This is a very simple experience of body sensing. Remember when I said that our amazing brains think about 60,000 thoughts a day? Well, the great thing about body sensing, and it's so simple, is it takes us out of our brains and into our bodies. It literally takes us down all the way to our feet. And it's a way to recenter yourself and to ground yourself. Another great thing to do for body sensing is to think about one of your happy places. This is mine at Half Moon Bay Beach. And really take some time when you go to one of your happy places in nature to tune into all 5 senses. The sights, the sounds, the smells, the feel of the sand on your bare feet, and bring along a snack for tasting as well. You've probably heard of Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, and he's a practitioner of non-sleep deep rest, NSDR, which is also known as Yoga Nidra. And in an interview with the Wall Street Journal, he said that he sometimes unwinds with the help of something called NSDR, a term coined by Stanford neuroscience professor Andrew Huberman, who says it involves self-inducing a state of calm and directing our focus on something. I found these podcasts, which are non-sleep deep rest. So while I find it difficult to meditate, I can go to YouTube and find a video in 10, 20, or 30 minutes. So I do that occasionally. He often will do this in the middle of the afternoon, a very busy work day. And what happens is in as little as 10 minutes, and all you do is lie on the ground or the couch and listen to it. And it's a body sensing practice. He feels restored, he feels calmer, he has more clarity, and he has more focus. And according to Professor Huberman, NSDR can help people relax, fall asleep more easily, reduce stress and anxiety, ease pain, and even accelerate learning. So you can go on YouTube. I did find several that I enjoyed, including from a woman named Rosalie Yoga. Well, that's her YouTube name, ROSALIEYOGA. So consider trying NSDR. Let's move on to gratitude practice, which I think is a wonderful and often researched idea to improve positive feelings. And you may have heard of a typical gratitude practices, write down 3 things you're grateful for. Well, this one's a little bit different. It's from the Stanford Health Improvement Program. And it's at night before you go to sleep to write down what 3 things went well today and what was my role in making them happen. And they found out that after subjects did this for 2 weeks, by day 5, they started noticing more positives. They had less burnout and depression, and more happiness and better sleep, even 6 months later after doing a 2-week program. So let's take a minute right now, grab your pen or pencil and some paper, and think about the past 24 hours. What are 3 things that went well, and what was your role in making them happen? So let's go ahead and do that. If you feel like it, you can put something into chat that you came up with. And it's so simple, right? Remember that metaphor of pulling weeds, planting seeds, and watering the flowers? Well, a gratitude practice like this has to do with planting seeds and watering the flowers. It really does get you to start focusing on the positive things that make you feel good. And doing it right before sleep causes you to go to sleep with a more positive feeling, which can even give you better dreams and deeper rest. And they've studied that people with a gratitude practice can increase their life satisfaction by 25%. So I think that that is a significant increase, and it's pretty simple. Here's one of the things I'm grateful for: my pet cat, Persephone, spelled with a P-U-R-R at the beginning of her name. And have you ever noticed that animals like cats and dogs, they're very in the moment and they're very mindful of all their 5 senses. They're not worrying about that thing that happened last week, and they're not worrying about planning for the next thing a week from now. They're only focused on right now. And petting your pet cat and really tuning into them as a living being is another wonderful mindfulness practice. I love to look at her beautiful face, her green eyes. I love to hear her purring or feel that vibration of her purr. Her fur is so soft. And sometimes she will knead me. You know how cats will like make biscuits? Sometimes she'll massage me like that. And it's a wonderful thing. So your cat or dog can be a mindfulness practice. Art and creativity are another form of mindfulness. This is a picture of my youngest daughter taking a picture of a picture. This is at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. The famous artist, Wayne Thiebaud, he did so many amazing paintings, a lot of them of food. And it's amazing to watch art. I love going to art museums. For one thing, to get the whole impression of it and how it affects you, and to really be with it for a while. And then maybe to walk up close and zone in on some details or some elements of the picture. And I love seeing the brush strokes, if you get really up close, to see the texture of the painting, the combination of colors that are blended, maybe a little bit of a messy mistake or something in the corner, and to really notice all of these visual details. And there are so many other forms of art and creativity that can be mindfulness practices, either to consume and appreciate or to create yourself. It could be art or music or writing. Like I mentioned, poetry. I've taught a class called Exploring Creative Mindfulness at Stanford 3 times, and we did a variety of art projects, including collage and origami and a technique called Zentangle, which you may want to look at if you're interested in finding a new hobby of mindful art. It's called Zentangle. But you have to totally be focused and pay attention. You can't be multitasking when you're making art, or it won't come together. We did a complex origami folding with 8 pieces of paper. And if you're not paying attention and doing the folds correctly, it's not going to work. So that's why art and creativity can also be a practice. So another wonderful category is called Shinrin-yoku. You may have heard of it. I have this great book. It's called Shinrin-yoku, The Japanese Art of Forest Bathing by Yoshifumi Miyazaki. And basically, they've been really studying this seriously in Japan for a while. And I'll read you a few things from the book. It's around 7 million years since our ancestors started evolving into the modern humans we are today. During this process of evolution, we've spent more than 99.99% of our time living in a natural environment. Our bodies are adapted to nature. Shinrin-yoku cannot treat disease, but it can have a preventative medical effect that makes falling ill less likely and can help reduce the strain on health services worldwide that stress-related illnesses cause each year. So they've been studying a whole variety of outdoor activities and have found considerable improvement in measurements, including cortisol concentration in the saliva, pulse rates, systolic and diastolic blood pressure, parasympathetic and sympathetic nerve activity. And I'll read you some of the variety of practices that people engage in Japan, falling under this category of Shinrin-yoku. Meditation and yoga outdoors, hammock time, doesn't that sound fun? Water, I feel very restorative near water. Direct contact with trees, that means touching them, smelling them, and maybe even hugging them. Stargazing, sea of clouds, snow-covered mountains, Nordic walking, cherry blossom viewing, flowers and forests, terraced rice fields, tea picking, music concerts, autumn foliage, aroma workshops, aromas with scents from nature, of course, and horse riding and dog therapy. One of my favorite activities is walking and hiking, and this is a picture of one that I did overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And the book has a few guidelines if you want to do some mindful walking. So here are their suggestions. Walk at least 2 hours alone with no phones, sensing into your body and using all 5 senses, noticing your location in space, the beginning, middle, and end of the steps, and the beginning, middle, and end of your walk. And touch nature. Yes, this is where hugging a tree comes into being. So if you have any favorite places that you enjoy in nature, feel free to enter that into chat because it really is so restorative. I mentioned before with Sundar Pichai that he got this idea for NSDR from Stanford professor Andrew Huberman. By the way, he has an amazing podcast called the Huberman Lab podcast. And one of the things he suggested is to go outside at sunrise. And so I've been doing this ever since I listened to his podcast, and it's a wonderful morning practice. So about 5 minutes before sunrise, I go outside and sit in the chair outside, and I'm noticing what I notice, all 5 senses. I bring my coffee out there for the tasting. And then you see the sky change. And I love the pink colored clouds as the sun is rising. And then the birds start waking up and their tweets start changing. And the reason why Professor Huberman, who is both a neurobiologist and an ophthalmologist, recommends going outside at sunrise
Checking my device.
is that getting the low level light into your optic nerve, it tells your brain it's time to wake up, and it helps regulate your circadian rhythms, and it helps make you feel more awake and energized. All right, now we're going to do another easy mindfulness practice, which is to watch a nature video that will also have music. So this has to do with watching, listening, and it has to do with nature. Enjoy. It's about 4 minutes. And finally, I'm going to read you a poem. This is by Wu Man Hui Kai. He was a Chinese Chan master born in 1183. And here's his poem. 10,000 flowers in spring, the moon in autumn, a cool breeze in summer, snow in winter. If your mind isn't clouded by unnecessary things, this is the best season of your life. So we practice 2 breathing techniques, mindful eating with 5 senses, body sensing, a gratitude practice, a nature video with music, and you'll just listen to a Chinese poem. I hope you received useful information, a chance to practice, some ideas to explore further, and some motivation to try them for yourself. We have a few minutes for any questions that you may have before Parag wraps it up.
Folks, you can just type any questions you have in the chat and I'll read them off. Suzanne, I had a question about the eating thing. Since different people, you know, especially when you're a family and you're trying to eat together, not everybody's at a 3 at the same time. Is there any recommendation how to manage it that way?
Yeah, that's a good point, that when you're eating with others, often the conversation and spending quality time with the other people might greatly surpass the whole task of eating a meal. So yeah, it's very interesting. Like if you think about our traditional Thanksgiving meal, we have traditional dishes. It's a huge amount of food. People often eat too much. They may start some family arguments. And so maybe there's an opportunity to even bring to the meal a little mindful eating. And maybe it is starting with a simple piece of fruit at the beginning.
That's an interesting thought. That's a good point. Yeah. I think the challenge of taking a 2-hour walk without a phone, maybe just for safety purposes only, but you know, if it's there, you're probably going to check it. But
Yeah, you can have it, but you know, maybe not be looking at it and not having it as an appendage, which it usually is seemingly
right,
attached
usually
to us.
super glued to your hand. Exactly.
Yes.
So without that, I think is a good one, is a very good one, and figuring out how to do that. It looks like Celia is based in Utah. I think I got that right. And so she does that all the time, I'm presuming. So,
yeah, and you
good
can
for
start small, right? This is
Mhm.
all customized and it's something you can experiment with. So maybe the first experiment is to go on a walk for 30 minutes around your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And
just-
maybe take one photo of one item that you see.
Just to ensure that you and I guess the key piece there with photography is just that you are focusing all of your energy and your thoughts on one thing, and that's why it's so mindful, right? So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
fantastic. I'm not seeing any questions come up, so I understand why. Actually, beautiful presentation, very thorough, very easy to follow, quite honestly, and I can't thank you enough for that. So I will go ahead and steal the slide share for if we are in an audience. I would say, hey, let's thank Suzanne with a round of applause. So you can do that. You can do that where you are. That'd be great. For our, you know, what's going on with SASE. First off, we wanted to do a quick poll. If you would, feedback's always a gift. Provide us with a little bit of feedback on how this went, what you thought. Jessica, if you could fire up that poll, I'd appreciate it. There are 2 questions here. One is how you would rate this webinar, and and second is, would you recommend it? 1 is bad, 10 is good. So just make sure you also take that into account as well. And scroll down. You'll need to scroll down for the second question before hitting submit. Our next big event is our leadership, is our conference, Reimagine Your Leadership Journey, in person in Atlanta on October 6th and 7th. Jessica will toss in the registration link in the chat, or you can just type in convention.saseconnect.org. It's a 2-day event focused on leadership development training for Asians by Asians. And the collegiate conference for undergrads and the STEM career fair will be going on concurrently as well. But we've got 2 full days of focusing on your leadership development. So hopefully many of you are joining us there. Registration prices go up in a few days, so please do register now. If you're not able to make the in-person conference, we do have a virtual option. It's not a hybrid event. It's a separate independent virtual event that'll happen on 3 consecutive Fridays starting in October 28th. That website you can also get to. You can also get to the virtual site from there as well. So beyond that, if you want to make sure to follow us on LinkedIn. That's where all of our updates are going to be. And you can also follow us on Facebook, or go to our webpage. Reach out to us if you've got any questions. If any of you are with ERGs that aren't connected with us, we'd definitely love to have a connection and come and welcome more folks into our family of organizations. So with that, I think that is the last slide. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And if you have any questions and you want to unmute, you are welcome to do so.